And welcome to the Grindhouse. I'm JC, your host, and tonight we're actually here with a very a special panel to do a little bit of state of the industry and talking about gaming. So I'll have them introduce themselves in a moment. But so yes, our usual band of merry men and women will be back. Actually, Gwen is here with us, so we still have one regular besides myself. But they will be back next week, and I believe that we'll probably see comments from Bryce and Terry and everything in the audience. So they are here with us in spirit. But just to kind of get the initial stuff out of the way, we do have a Patreon. So if you are interested in helping us keep the lights on, definitely go ahead and give us some support there. We have merch. So if you'd like to see all our horrible logos and stuff pasted on anything from bikini bottoms to tank tops to handkerchiefs, masks, or whatever we decide to put on there, you can find it. Also, we have a coffee account. So again, if you a couple dollars, just send us a little treat. And last but not least, okay, can't English, Solarian Games, which is the company that I am part of. You can find us on DriveThru or solariangames.com if you want to see any of our games, from Top Secret to Tales from the Fallen Empire, Spooky Beans, and some of our upcoming stuff. Even our new module, Forged with Fire, which just was released about a few weeks ago. So I'm going to do that and make our faces a little bigger there on the screen. Bring up the our comments here. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead in the order that I see people, which is never usually the order which they are actually sitting in. So actually, we will start and just give an introduction, who you are and what you do in the industry. Like I said, it could be simple, it can be poetic, however you want to go against. So let's actually start with Petra.
Hi, my name is Petra Jackal, and I am co-owner of Dark Phoenix Games, running games at conventions and private conventions as well, and co-director of the Rising Phoenix GameCon.
All right, thank you. Bronwyn.
I'm Bronwyn. I guess I'm not anything super profesh or anything like that. I just play a lot of tabletop role-playing games whenever I can, that kind of stuff, and then tweet about it.
All right, awesome. Gwen.
This time I will actually properly introduce myself. I'm Gwen. I'm part of Eldritch Osiris Games. We do Pathfinder 2nd Edition stuff, and currently we're working on Mechfinder.
Ooh, Mechfinder. All right, that I didn't know that. I will have to talk about that offline, or not. And Milk Teeth.
Okay, teeth, milk teeth, or teeth and milk. I just casually play video games, and I do enjoy a good tabletop every now and then with my pals. That's about it. Nothing special.
Right, well, no, everything's special. And the reason why I kind of wanted to go with the panel that we have tonight is just everyone has something to offer, from everything from, say, Milk Teeth to someone who's just, doing some casual stuff. Bronwyn, I know you tweet a lot of things. That's how I think we've kind of interconnected on Twitter. Petra, like, we've been to so many conventions together, in New England that, I see you at least 3 or 4 times a year. And Gwen, I see you every week. Not that I'm like going, Gwen, every week. Come on now. But we'll get it going. So, all right, great. So we're actually going to go to our first segment. So I'm going to play a cheesy bumper, and then we'll kind of get into it. So where's my cheesy bumper? Here we go. All right, cheesy bumper away. That is actually new and updated. So the original one, and Gwen can to attest to it, is that for some reason I guess I knew what it was, but I didn't quite understand. So anyway, it was a scene of like all these various flashy spots from Amsterdam, which kind of got a little racy. So I'm just kind of going, well, maybe I need to change that. And every week I keep saying I'm going to change it, I'm going to change it, and I never.
You finally did.
Yeah, although it's pieces of like Conan Exiles and something else that I managed.
That's great.
I mean, that's slightly
Looks
more
cool.
relevant.
All right, so let's start. So Bronwyn, I'm going to pick on you first, in a nice way. So what this week? What have you done in the gaming sphere?
Well, sadly, you picked a really bad week because normally I play in a live stream game on Saturdays, but I didn't this. Actually, we've been missing quite a few Saturdays, and he's actually called it as far as actually playing the same game anymore. So we might be switching to Monster of the Week instead, just because scheduling conflicts and all that kind of stuff. So this Saturday I didn't. It was actually on me this time because I went on a cider tour with my family. We do it every year. So I did that instead. One of my regular games that we play at home has been continually postponed, but that's apparently going to happen not this next weekend, but the weekend after. That's a zombie apocalypse style game. Other than that, I've been scratching my itch, so to speak, with Elder Scroll Online, because that's as close to D&D as I can get at the moment. And I'm working on a world that I'm kind of building to DM at some point. So I've started mapping some stuff, but that's just kind of casually doodling.
Now, are you at all the game master in any of the games that you do, or no?
I have never actually been the game master. I keep talking about doing it, and I've got like a game master's guide and all that fun stuff. I think if I do it, I'll probably start with, I said do. Probably start with a prepackaged adventure of some sort, just to, get my feet wet first before diving into fully homebrewed, like, here's this world I invented.
There's some merit to homebrew worlds too. There's a style of gaming that I've really found amusing called and I just had it in my head and it just fell out of my head. But it's an OSR style of gaming. And what it is that everyone around the table takes a turn game mastering, and they basically use the same world. And so GM1 will take it like for 2 or 3 sessions and have the players explore one part of the world. And then the next player will say, all right, well, cool. Now you're back in our safe village. Now we're going to go explore the caves that are to the north and things like that. And I just had it's a style of game, but I can't remember the name of it, but things like that are fun. And game mastering is always fun. I think that as much as I like to bitch and moan about game mastering, I love doing it. So there's kind of a bit of like weird power effect, and then also just being able to like tell the story yourself. So that's kind of fun. Petra, anything game wise?
Yeah, I am currently in a Friday night game. Curse of Strahd is currently what we're running, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. I am trying to get my Fiasco games together for Carnage and Total Con. And I have dipped my toe in the video gaming world with Baldur's Gate. But I've got maybe 2 hours on. So no expert here on that one. But yeah, that's kind of been my week for the most part. It's been busy, but it's great. I love tabletop role playing. It is my passion, and Fiasco is my GMing game of choice. It is a very heavy storytelling role playing game that is very lighthearted and a ton of fun. If you ever get a chance to do it, super easy to GM. If you ever want to dip your toe into GMing, Fiasco is probably a great way to start. It's great fun and very easy to do.
And there's so many tool sets to Fiasco too, which is just the other amazing part. Like no matter what genre of game that you want to play, there is a Fiasco like set for it, which is
and
great.
they're free. Some of the more popular ones you might pay $5 for, but it's a very cheap system to get into, and it's you don't, there's no real prep, to be honest with you. It's literally you got your play set and you got your dice and you're off to the races. It's very easy.
So my question for you then is, how do you feel about Curse of Strahd? So, and the only reason I ask is that we were actually in the Curse of Strahd campaign for like 2 years. It was definitely a haul.
I'm really liking the way that they've kind of set up the world in a sense of, you can't really travel through the mists and souls don't ever actually go anywhere. You're surrounded by ghosts, and it's that kind of dark, creepy feel to it, no matter where you go. I like the setting. Our character groups are eclectic and they're a lot of fun. All very heavy role players, so we really get into the dynamics of the game and the role playing, the systems and the monsters and getting into the real investigative pieces of Strahd, which is really interesting.
Yeah, no, I had a very good experience with it. Actually, we live streamed it for probably the first year and a half, and then afterwards we just were kind of like, and it was weird because we did that during the pandemic, which I think a lot of people started beginning doing their live stream during the pandemic. It's like, well, I can't really game anywhere else. I might as well get OBS.
And you let people hang for the last half of that? What?
We felt like we were hanging by the last half of that. I won't go into the details of how the campaign ended, but it was definitely kind of like we were sad, but also relieved at at the ending of it. So, Gwen, what about you? Anything this week?
So I've been getting really into pirates again. I watched the Netflix One Piece live action show, and I really liked that. And I started reading the manga of One Piece, and I'm now on chapter 69 after 2 days. And it got me kind of back into a campaign idea I've wanted to do for a long time, which is pirates and, sailing the seven seas or however many seas I make in my campaign setting. And like thinking about things I never thought about before that One Piece kind of brought forward to me, like reputation with not only like the military group or the Marines, but also like other pirate factions, and how to make the other pirates kind of like interesting and like gimmicky but in a fun way. And yeah, I've kind of been just like putting those pieces together in my head, and yeah.
All right, well, cool. Pirates are definitely awesome, for sure. And Milk Teeth, what have you been doing in the world of gaming over the past week?
Okay, so very mild. Over the past week, I've started, I think, 2 playthroughs of 2 separate games, both with my partner. So, like, we've been doing this sort of thing, so, like, because we're long distance, so, like, we stream games to each other. So we started a playthrough of, he's playing Outer Wilds, if you've heard of it, and then I'm streaming to him. I'm streaming Darksiders 2 for like the 5 millionth time. Darksiders 2.
Darksiders. I love Darksiders.
Wait, who said that? Because I have a little bit of a delay.
Me. I said that.
You're my best friend now. You're my best friend.
I'm so into Darksiders. I love Darksiders. It's great.
That's think awesome. If I had like actually like if I could get the money back for all the merch that I've purchased for Darksiders, I'd probably be like a millionaire.
So and it's weird. Like I feel like such a relic when it comes to video games. I mean, I sit there pretty much and play one game. Like my Steam is like lists and lists of games over like the past 10 years where they'd go on sale during the summer, and I would buy like 20 new games going, I'm going to play that. I'm going to play that. And now it's like I pick 4 games usually out of it, which is Conan Exiles, Portal, Skyrim, and like I can't think of what the other one is off the top of my head right now, but that's all I play. And I'll just the Shadowrun game, and I'll just intermix.
Oh, yeah.
But otherwise, yeah. I mean, I heard Baldur's Gate's really cool. I am kind of cheap, so I'm just like going, maybe I'll wait till it goes a little bit below $60 to dive in. But it's definitely on my list. So all right, well, thank you for that, and that's just kind of a little bit of a warm up for our next topic. Just taking a look here at our comments here, so it just looks like everyone's kind of introducing themselves. Bryce, welcome. Dana, good to see you again. Rachel, of course, welcome. Wonder Mog, pleasure to meet you, and thank you for joining us tonight. So I want to talk a little bit about modern gaming aesthetics, and maybe the title is a little kind of primpy as to like where I was actually trying to go with this. So last week we actually talked about White Wolf games, and how pretty much before White Wolf games, it was a very male centric game, and that's not 100% true, because there's like my wife Mary had game mastered since she was a teenager, right? So it wasn't that there were no women in gaming, but out in the open at conventions and things like that, it was just kind of your very stereotypical nerdy men, gathered around the table, eating Cheetos. I mean, it just, I hate to be stereotypical, but that's kind of, how it was. But then when like White Wolf came around, that changed. That whole landscape completely changed, because for whatever reason, the idea of playing a vampire, playing a werewolf, playing a mage, and the way those games evolved, it really changed the demographic. So going to a convention back in like 1986 compared to going to a convention like 1994 were completely different. And obviously, as the indie movement hit towards the late 90s, and that opened a brand new market, and a lot of ideas came in to where we're at now, where it's a not as diverse as it should be, but the culture has definitely grown, expanded, and broken a lot of original tropes that were there. So the question I'm posing to each of you is, how have you seen gaming change towards yourself, towards the people around you, towards the culture around you, and from back when you started to current day? Has there been a huge change in your opinion? Are there things that you felt maybe could have changed differently or more? Or so that is the question. I will leave it as kind of an open-ended, and if anyone has any comments, they can jump in. Otherwise, I will be mean and pick on someone.
I mean, I'm happy to start. I think I'm
Okay.
probably the oldest here, so I've been around the longest. When I first started, I was 15, and that was quite a few years ago. And it was a very, very different scene than it is now. Like you said, especially at conventions. I started gaming with my brother, and it was just a group of us. When I would go to conventions, I would almost always be the only female at the table. There just weren't a lot of women going to conventions. It just didn't happen. Now, conventions are run by women. There's at least half population of women. I think that's just opened the door to a lot more diversity of all different types. Games have become more open. I think there's a lot more storytelling, role playing, relationship, and more diverse people sitting at the table in general. And I think it's even growing more and more as we speak, which is fantastic. So it's really grown. I think it still has a ways to go, but I'm very proud of the gaming community and kind of how we've grown through the years and the acceptance that we have. We've generally been a group of people who haven't fit into a lot of other places, have found gaming as their home. And now it's becoming more mainstream, and we're seeing a lot more people coming to the table. But it still has that nice, tight community feel to it.
I see Gwen shaking her head a lot. Do you have anything to add?
Huh? I was just nodding. But I started playing when I was 7 years old, which was 21 years ago. So I'm still like new-ish compared to the older folks, but being trans made me see kind of like both sides of things, like as I grew older and kind of found myself more. And when I was a kid, I was really into like manly man stuff, like publicly, but privately I'd be more into like, you know, fairies and elves and stuff like that. And seeing the games that my friends would show me and stuff like that, and like playing video games and things, like you would see a lot more like white people. Usually the women are like half naked and the men are like always burly and wearing either barbarian robes themselves or like heavy armor and like knights with like some magnificent horse, or they'd be like an elderly wizard, and then you'd have just girl in a bikini, doesn't matter what she is, doesn't matter what she does, she's in a bikini. And,
Chainmail bikini.
yeah.
Chainmail even, yeah.
And you know,
You're
as I
lucky
grew
it's a
older, I
really
saw that
good
kind
one.
of as I grew older, it's like kind of changed. And I noticed with like video games as a kid, like finding out that Samus was a girl was huge. And kind of having like those more feminine role models, like in Twilight Princess with Midna. Hold on, my dog's being an asshole.
All right, Bryce. I have to post this. So Bryce asked, "Why can't we get that horse into a bikini?" Well, different type of game, Bryce.
Different type of game. But yeah, and then you know, as I grew older, I started seeing a bit less of that and more like female characters taking on more powerful roles. Like Midna comes to mind from Twilight Princess, even Zelda to a degree in Twilight Princess. And they all kind of had this, like, it was kind of like a slow build up, I guess, and like seeing that and feeling more secure about like who I am over the years, because of like the influence is not just being all manly men doing manly things. Like it could be a girl being a badass, and not necessarily because she's a femme fatale, but because she's just a badass.
You know, and you're speaking about conventions. I noticed one trope that has kind of disappeared, I'd say over the past 10 years, is I remember going to my first Gen Con in the early 2000s, and every game company had the booth babe. Like they would hire them. They probably weren't even gamers. They were just these unridiculously well-built women wearing very skimpy chainmail bikinis, standing by each of the booths, basically telling people to come in and like to look at these things called games. It was kind of hilarious. Some of them were actually gamers and worked for the company, but some of them you could just tell they were just like, all right, modeling agency, could you have someone here during these days in August and tell them they need to wear a chainmail bikini, which we'll provide. So that's that was just also part of the culture back then too, speaking to you know, where women were basically all red Sonya and men got to dress in robes and armor and things like that. That's changed a lot too, especially you look at a lot of Wizards of the Coast's art these days. It's very even keeled. It's no more of that just kind of very sexist, misogynist, loaded side. And not to say that certain like genres have that. So sword and sorcery, right? You're always going to want to have both men and women in the horrible barbarian costumes, but not when it's just like, you know, medieval England and here's the noble and then, you know, the barbarian woman next to him. It's just like, wait a minute, that doesn't work. They didn't have chainmail bikinis in like 1312. So anyway, I'll be quiet now. Milk Teeth, any comments on what we're talking about? And I know you're probably one of the younger of our gamers, so any thoughts?
Okay, well, I did start getting into like video games. I think I don't remember specifically, but it was like single digit age. Kind of grew up playing, like I was kind of exposed to the games that my parents were exposed to, like the 8-bit stuff like that. And so just going off of what Gwen was talking about with like how it's like you'll have like a wizard and then like a barbarian and like whole ass like armor and then lady in a bikini. I've seen like a lot of characters in games that I play maybe made like in 2010 or like before that or around that time. They'll like they'll have that sort of thing where it's like you have like these like ugly male like demon enemies, right? And then the female enemies are like they have like a full like face of makeup and like
And they're
they have
drop
very
dead gorgeous.
generous body type. And but then on the other end of the spectrum, some characters, well, they're like very, I guess, sexualized, like their outfits don't make sense in a practical sense. They still have like an air of confidence, like despite the fact their outfits make no sense, they're still like badass like video game women. Like for example, there's we talked about Darksiders earlier, there's Fury, there's there's some of like I'm blanking on the other names because I'm a little nervous. Then there's in other games like there's Samus.
Samus
She's an
without her
iconic one. Yeah, Samus without her armor and with her armor. That kind of is like best of both worlds. You get like practical suit of armor, and then you get like badass babe without the armor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's not over sexualized either because it's just a bodysuit.
All right. Well, thank you. And Bronwyn, any thoughts on?
Well, like I've been playing tabletop role playing games since high school. So I think like, and a lot of the differences I see is like one in myself as you get older, and then like with the group as a whole, it goes down to that like stigma to it, right? So, you know, in high school, especially, you know, the idea of like the Stranger Things kids and stuff like that, like the D&D kids were picked on, like we weren't cool, and like you take that and you like almost compound that being a teenage girl when like you feel like you don't fit in there either, almost, right? Like, because at least those guys all had each other as guys, and then you're kind of there, but you also feel a little outcasted. Like I never played with a girl in high school. I was the only one, so we had our friend, he would DM, and that's pretty much all we got. When I got to university, I found a D&D club or whatever, but it was almost like this weird forced diversity kind of thing they were doing. There was a couple other girls, but it was almost like they had to put one of us at each table just to make it so that we were diversified. So each table had a girl. So it was only actually recently that I started actually played in a game with other women, which was crazy. And it actually took me a while before I even realized that, oh, I'm like, this is like the first time I've actually like had a campaign with other women. And I think part of that also amounts to like, there's really no difference when you're playing the game. You're just playing it with other players. Like I don't notice too much of a difference between girl players and guy players when you're doing what you got to do, right? But as far as like when I was in university, that was kind of like I would go, and then none of my other university friends that were in classes with me and stuff knew that I was doing that. Like, I wouldn't go around advertising it. I wouldn't be trying to convince other people to also like join us and stuff like that, because it was like this very, I still want to look cool kind of thing. And then as I myself get older, you come to realize that I don't care. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm going to do what I find fun. And, you know, hang out with those people that also enjoy doing the same things I do. So then that's opened up like kind of a whole new realm of being able to, like I said, play at a game with other women and meet more people and that kind of stuff in the gaming industry. And I actually also highly attribute that, I'm going to sound old here, to the dawn of the internet. Because again, in high school and stuff like that, the internet was like barely getting going and stuff. So anybody that you played with were people that you knew. Like you only had your population of whatever, backwater town I grew up in. But now you can meet everybody across the country. You can find your people fairly easily. So it makes it a lot. You get out there and you realize that there are so many of them. That's why it's become so much more mainstream. Like so many people who were players and then like wouldn't say anything suddenly realize, oh, all these people also play. So then they become a lot more open about it. Same thing, like it's very true with women as well. Like a lot of them wouldn't run around advertising that, they like tabletop role-playing games or video games or that kind of stuff. But now there are women streamers, there are women in the industry, like actually building games and stuff like that. You get like, you look at any of the old handbooks, like good luck finding a woman on any of them, like name wise, as far as creators and that kind of stuff. But now there's so many of them. Celebrities coming forward and saying that they play, and suddenly everybody's like, oh yes, I can nerd out and it's cool now. So I think that's really opened up for diversity and really letting us like come out of the closet, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot of, so if you think back to like D&D, and D&D was a huge culprit of this in the early days, is that they even had it set up that if you were playing a woman or a female character, you actually couldn't be as good as male characters. Your strength was
we had a strength disadvantage.
Yeah, strength disadvantage. They didn't do anything with level. That was more on the like elves and dwarves. Like, dwarves can go to a 10th level and elves can only go to a 7th level and things like that. But that, I don't know, that was just kind of weird that it was capped. And then I think around 3rd edition is when they kind of just said, screw it, we don't need any of that. And then 5th edition did away with, at least in the latter part of it, they did away with modifiers altogether. They're just like, here's positive modifiers, you just put them wherever you want, because not everyone, is built the same. But Bronwyn, you actually bring up a point that I was just thinking about, and I'm going to ask everyone here, how do you feel about gaming becoming mainstream? So, again, we went from the nerds being shoved in closets to those people over there who probably belong to a cult, to now where it's like everywhere you go, gaming culture is just, you see it on TV. Like Big Bang Theory had a lot of episodes where they talked about role-playing games. Critical Role has basically gone, big time. Like that's almost a household word now. It's not even just related to gaming anymore. And you have a lot of other streamers, as you mentioned, and gamers who are well known. I know for, whether you like them or not, there's people out there like, oh God, why can't I think of her name? Starts with a D. Jenny D. Doesn't start with a D. Like people like Jenny D and things like that out there who, they do stuff. Not a big fan, but again, it's still a voice out there that has their opinion and such. But mainstream, how do you feel about mainstream gaming? And Bron, we'll start with you since you're bringing it up, and then we'll go back around.
Well, I'm like I said, I'm almost all for it because it's brought it out into the light and like makes it so much easier for anybody else who wants to even just talk to the regular people around them about it. Like, water cooler talk. Now you can talk about like, say, Critical Role or any of those other big ones, and nobody looks at you like you're crazy. Like they all actually have heard of these people. It's a little difficult because, sometimes you do get the ones that you can tell they're like, I don't want to say jumping on the bandwagon or like any kind of like gatekeeping stuff like that, but it's like they're doing it but not really doing it. Like even if you're new and actually being enthusiastic about it and like doing it, it's like I'm all for that. Like I'm for as many new people coming in as possible, but then there's the ones that like are like almost literally just taking a picture of themselves next to like the player's handbook but not actually doing anything. And you're like, are you actually playing though? But I mean, even that, like, how is that really a bad thing? Because then it's like just more like, I guess, publicity or that kind of stuff. It does also pose problems for like when you get Wizards of the Coast to do who've been doing some questionable things lately in the name of big business. So then you feel almost like you're losing quality over quantity kind of thing. So that gets that's kind of, I guess, the downside to that. But, and I know you get a lot of the, like you said, old men shaking sticks at like all these new guys and all their like woke ideas and all that kind of stuff. But I'm all for like bringing in new ideas and new people, and
Yeah,
I mean, the more popular, the more stuff we get.
You also get the Mercer effect too, which I'll talk about in a bit. But let's just go. Milk Teeth, how do you feel about shows like Critical Role or actually, that's sad. I can't even think of another one other than Critical Role that's huge. I
forget the name of it, but there's one that like I do that they're more prominent on TikTok. They have like little puppet like animations.
Oh yeah,
for some
those
of their,
guys.
Yeah, I forget what they're called.
I also forget what they're called, but they'll probably be on
I think
YouTube.
They're that popular.
Yeah, I think it's like Tales from like the Stinky Dragon or something.
Yes,
but
Tales from
like
Stinky
I
Dragon,
think it's awesome. But I think it's awesome that like, because like you said, when we like it went from like people who play video games and tabletop being like nerds and like kind of like fly on the wall, like to be like a huge mainstream thing. That's absolutely awesome because it lets people find like new outlets, forms of escapism without feeling like, oh, I'm gonna get made fun of or like something like that. I know certainly personally it's like a huge escapism thing, and being able to do it, yeah, those guys, without being able to do it without being like fear of judgment is awesome.
No, definitely, it takes away the stigma and makes it a little bit more mainstream. Petra, what do you think of just basically the whole mainstream and gaming being more of like a visual sport compared to actually like jumping in and playing?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. Just like with anything else. I think there's been such a boom to creativity. There's been so many new games out there, no new genre of games, new types of games. We're able to tap into that really creative talent that people have. They're not afraid to show it. They're not afraid to, hey, I got this new system. I created my own world. I'm going to be putting it out there, and they're able to publish on their own, and we're able to just have kind of a wealth of new in a game system that's been dominated by D&D pretty much. And that's been amazing, and that's been awesome. There's a little bit of a loss, as you said, with big companies coming in, and they're making it more of a business, where it's been very much a kind of a basement game system where people come together and they sit at a table, and they're face to face, and they're talking to each other, and having that kind of connection. They build those friendships. They feel those. Now, again, unlike Milk Teeth, I grew up in a society where we didn't have internet. We didn't have this ability to get on the screen and connect with people. And the fact that we're able to do that now across the world, literally, you can get on a game and I can be with someone on Germany, gaming at the same time with them. And that's been also fantastic. It's just the more struggle of trying to keep that community feel to something that's exploded to literally global effects at this point. But I love seeing new people coming in. I love seeing the kids coming in and learning how to game and being excited about it. And you're going to have the people who are a little fake about it, but I think that's okay. I think that's all right. As long as the people you sit at the table with, and they're passionate about gaming, and they want to just be there to enjoy the time that they're with you, whether it's on screen or at an actual table itself, being able to do something that you enjoy and that you're happy doing, is just great. So in general, I'm in favor as well of it all. I just like to see people enjoying something that I enjoy.
All right. And Gwen, not to leave you out.
So for me, I have been kind of mixed on it. Like I've experienced firsthand like the Matt Mercer effect, and saw it in both like a positive light and a negative light because my university friends got really into 5e because of Critical Role, and one of my now ex friends got like really into very performative GMing and being more like out there and over the top. And he even wanted to do like a podcast with the group, and that ended up like falling out because just resources, time, and all that jazz. And it all kind of felt very forced and not very authentic. And I've witnessed people who come into the hobby and they expect the game to be like what they see on the podcast. And then it's like, what do you mean I don't get like an arc of going from an asshole to the beloved party member because I'm stealing everyone's loot and like making sure that I get what I want and no one gets what they want. And I was hoping for like some kind of character arc, and instead it's like, no, don't be an asshole. Or at least like if you're going to do that, talk to the group about it first instead of just trying to like force a character arc on yourself or force this idea onto the group. And just a lot of like things like that feel very like showy. And I know a lot of people have been like very against moving away from like 5e for a long time, and then like the whole OGL debacle kind of like freed a lot of people from that and opened the floodgates to like other systems, and that was kind of like a blessing in disguise in a way. But yeah, it was very I'm very mixed on it because it has brought a lot of people into the hobby, but it's also just brought a lot of bad habits, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I kind of see in it is that one, it sets an expectation that's really unrealistic, where people will watch something like Critical Role who don't game and expect that when they do game, it's just going to be this high quality production thing with people doing funny voices. And and I think what people don't really see is that most people on Critical Role, or the thing Will Wheaton did a while back, which I can't remember, Tabletop, I think it was called, or something. But those are all professional comedians and actors who can pull that off. And to expect to come into a game and have a Matt Mercer sort of person in there is a little unrealistic. I mean, some game masters are great. They do voices, they set up props, they make it really engaging. But then you just kind of have the run-of-the-mill game master who, wants to run, Expedition at Barrier Peaks out of the module, with just some dice, and maybe they have a GM screen around. And there's nothing wrong with that style of play either. But I think also, too, that leads us to, in more modern times, you see a lot of the YouTube gamers. I'm a YouTube gamer too, so I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but I'm doing my quotation marks here. Is that they'll complain about DM burnout. And it's funny too, because you hear them talking like, oh yeah, no, I've been running this campaign for 6 months now, and I'm so stressed out and mentally like broken over it. And I'm sitting there going, 6 months? Like, some campaigns I ran back in the day went like 4 years, before they resolved themselves. And even then there was like, questions left open. So that's, I think, at least in my opinion, on where that the Mercer effect takes us, is that it's great because yes, everyone gets to see what role playing is. There was one that, I can't think of his name at the moment. I forgot what show, but he did this thing where it was like, it was a bunch of comedians playing D&D, or no, it was Pathfinder, I think, actually, at the time. And, but they would switch to an animation of like all the characters interacting with the world. And
that's cool.
I wish I could remember the darn name. Oh, Mark Harmon. anyway, Harmon Quest, that was it. Was the show, and it was really interesting. It was very adult. I think it was kind of Rick and Morty before Rick and Morty, but it was really interesting to watch a game being played, but it would switch to this whole animated section of it. But yeah, it's definitely a change, and to something that you were talking about, which leads us into our last little segment, is just kind of state of the industry, where I'd like to just get an understanding of where you would like to see gaming going. So Wizards of the Coast is a huge example of a company that had gone from some very humble beginnings when they first took over the D&D brand and started getting things going. But also we have to think that it was people like, oh my God, I am just horrible tonight remembering names. But the guy who, Peter Atkinson, was part of Wizards of the Coast initially, the guy who now owns Gen Con. But those were some serious gamers back in the day. And then suddenly, when they sold to Hasbro, it just kind of all started going down this slippery slope. But what have we seen in the past 6 months? Like at the beginning of this year, we've seen the Pinkertons get called out by Wizards of the Coast. We have seen them trying to basically pull the OGL license out from underneath tons of designers who have basically made their livelihood and living off of using that open license that basically somehow changed, and they were going to just basically pull the rug out under. And it's almost seems like every week they poke the bear, as it were, to just kind of, and you expect a company that would be like, hey, we want gamers to think we're inclusive, we want them, but they don't. They pander, but then in the back end, they just do all these horrible things. So they are a corporation who are just sitting there with the front end of trying to look like they're part of it, right? So and fortunately, there's a lot of like Paizo is not going along that train. They actually did the whole Orc license recently, which Chaosium joined, and I think a few other companies, but. And this is just kind of open discussion. So it's just how would you like to see the company evolve? Like, I mean, do you think should Wizards of the Coast take its stuff back and go back to home roots again? Are there other companies that you kind of see that maybe should step up front, like more indie companies? Maybe the time of the big entity game companies should be at an end, and maybe we should start looking more towards independent companies to kind of step up, because I mean there's a lot of great indie games out there that are just absolute, like Fiasco is one that's incredibly amazing, but actually it's gotten some good play time through like things like Will Wheaton's Tabletop and a few other sources, but it's not the household word game that perhaps it should be. Right. So with that said, I'm just going to throw the question out there. Are there any RPG games or companies that you think, what's your opinion on what the current companies are and maybe how things should evolve in the future?
I think there's been a break in trust with Wizards. I'm just not sure it's ever going to get that membership back. There's just been too much water under the bridge there. I think that the power of the voice was also shown with that, which was a great thing to see. I would love to see more indie games. I would love to see more homegrown games out there, as more the norm than the not norm. Personally, I think that whole inclusivity, the ability to be creative, to have a game system that no one's seen before or done. I think that's something that's going to keep that energy alive for us as we move forward in gaming.
Well, I've noticed that like at when Rising Phoenix does their room at TotalCon and at your own convention, you promote a lot of games that are great games, but are not very mainstream. Like I know that you do a lot of, like I've seen you do Cortex Plus games. Monty Cook's I can't think of Cypher System which I think I
Yep.
played in one of your Cypher System games at one point in the past. And it's good stuff. A lot of story-based games that don't get a lot of play. Because to me, to go to a convention and play D&D is kind of like, I don't know.
I mean, the point of going to a convention, sitting down to a 4-hour game, is to try things you've never tried before. To say, hey, is this interesting? Do I like it? You don't like it? It's been 4 hours and you're done, and you don't have to worry about it again. You don't spend money on it. You don't spend time on it. So it's nice to open the box to something different, so that people can have a chance to try it.
Absolutely. Bronwyn, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think they've made the point is that it's be really great to see a lot more independent, and it rebuilds that quality over quantity kind of thing again. If you get a lot more independent companies, I think it would also be nice if some of the other bigger ones, Pathfinder or Rifts, Castles and Crusaders, getting really big, if they could grow a little bit more. I think the only benefits to D&D is because it is so mainstream, right? Like that's the one that draws everybody in, I guess. I'm also a bit of a merch whore. So what I think Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro should do is stick to like, oh, look, now we can do, action figures and, that kind of stuff. And then leave the actual building of games to people who actually have more heart in it than a big corporation would. That's where I think it should go.
Yeah, I mean, D&D has just become a numbers game at this point. It's not even really about making the best system, and that, which is kind of unfair to say a little bit, because if you think about the reason 5e happened, well, not only just the fact that most gamers hated 4e, but 5e really happened because Mike Merle said, you know what, we kind of need the Rosetta Stone of game systems, something that the old school players can feel comfortable playing, but new school players will definitely love because of all the fiddly bits and things that we can add to it. But that it kind of lost its way after a while, because I was 5e. I mean, 5e as it is, the core books, it's an amazing game. I've played so many, and I even have like other games that are based on 5e. I've played I think there's a game called like Carbon 202249 or something, which is a cyberpunk game based on 5e. There's they just released something that's like a 5e modern that was pretty well done, and for some magical reason they got the licensing for The Crow, Escape from New York, Highlander, and all these like other major names. Evil Genius Games is the name of the company. Everyday Heroes is the name of the game system. But yeah, they actually have all these licensed source books. It's really cool. They did a Stargate game based on 5e. There's just an amazing amount of things. But again, other game companies are really kicking butt too. Modifius and their like 2D20 system for like, it does Fallout, Star Trek. We just did a Conan game with 2D20 recently. An amazing system. It's like a mixture of Fate, which is another kind of unsung hero in the gaming industry, and kind of a D20 game. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and I 100% agree with you. Give D&D back to the designers and developers who love it and who are going to be able to like steward in another age of gamers who love it, instead of looking at it as kind of a marketing tool. So I'm going to agree. Milkteeth, so being the youngest gamer, someone who hasn't been out there too long in the gaming world, other video games and stuff, what are your thoughts? I mean, so what role you play? D&D, right? I think that is as far as what you play.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you had a chance?
D&D. I've played.
I'm sorry, didn't hear
and
the
video games, obviously.
Okay, video games. Have you
I've
tried?
played D&D. I've played Call of Cthulhu.
Okay. Now, Call of Cthulhu is another excellent game. Chaosium is an awesome company, and it's a definite different flavor. So with the two games that you've played, between the two, any thoughts as to the differences between the two, or other games that maybe you'd like to see or like to play over time?
So So I was gonna build on what they were saying about how like indie games can like kind of keep things fresh, because I've seen and played a lot of different games. I think over the past couple months, like a couple cozy games. That's my cat. So a couple cozy games, like there's Potion Permit,
Oh yeah.
which kind of introduces a kind of neat um, kind of gameplay where it's like hunting gathering, but also puzzle solving. There's obviously like iconic names like Stardew Valley. I know Concerned Ape is working on another game, which is a little kind of different gameplay compared to Stardew Valley. I think it's called Haunted Chocolatier. There's one that I haven't played yet, but I've been planning on playing, called Venba. You kind of like go through notes and have to solve a puzzle to learn recipes, and like it tells a whole story, which I think the more people put these ideas out and kind of get they're basically like the brain children like this is the game I want, this is the gameplay that I would love to see work, and then when it's actually made and it gives people ideas to make their own games and give people inspiration to have their own kind of gameplay, and that keeps things really fresh and it doesn't get old if people keep getting inspired from game after game.
Well, thank you. Gwen, any thoughts?
Yeah, so going off of what Milk Teeth was saying, and kind of relaying that to tabletop games, like a lot of tabletop games have taken a lot of inspiration from 5e, and I think that's kind of a detriment in a lot of ways, where it's like the Dark Souls game that's set in the 5e thing, and then you have like Iron Kingdom's newest edition is just 5th edition, but with Iron Kingdom's splat of paint. And while both systems are good and definitely different from 5e as a base, it feels like a missed potential because they used 5e as like the groundwork and the foundation of like what they were making, instead of trying to basically create their own interesting, unique system on its own merits. And you also have games that have breaking out of the mold, like Lancer and Icon, which are maybe the same person, so I shouldn't really say them in the same breath, but and you also have like Shadowrun Anarchy and Battletech Destiny, MechWarrior Destiny, that's it, where they kind of have just completely gone in their own different direction, and there's like a little bit of like Roll20 blood in there, or not Roll20, but like D20 blood in there, but it's not like, it's a distant cousin rather than like a sibling.
All right. No, and there's, and again, going back to indie games, and not that I'm trying to like promote indie games, but so for example, and I'm hoping someone either does this at TotalCon, which is one of our local cons, or Rising Phoenix, which is another one of our local cons, which is new and very awesome, by the way. I mean, actually,
Thank you.
Milk Teeth, you are in New England, so definitely if you're ever thinking of going to a con, Rising Phoenix is definitely a very cool one to attend, as is TotalCon. But there's a game that I bought when I was in San Francisco some months back called Alice is Missing. And I think this is a perfect example of innovation in the game and an indie game. So first of all, the game is played within 90 minutes. Not that that's, that innovative. However, it's a non-verbal game. You don't speak at all in the game. It's also game masterless to a certain point. So the idea behind it is all of you are friends of a girl named Alice, who, as in the title, has gone missing. You're not 100% sure if she was kidnapped, she ran away from home. It could go very dark roads. It can go the other way, depending on how it's played. But all of you are friends of Alice, and instead of talking through the game, you're using your cell phones to text each other. And it's card based, so the cards will give you like where you might have saw Alice or a rumor that you heard. and everyone has different rumors. And in order to solve the mystery of what's happening, you're texting each other back and forth at the table. And this is how information is being passed from person to person. And it's a really interesting concept. And it's not that it's foolproof, because your character that you're playing in this game could end up at some horrible fate because of something happened, right? But it's just that dynamic of the unknown trying to solve a mystery and doing it non-verbally, right? You're not even supposed to use FaceTime. It's actually literally supposed to be text. You can email too, but that could take a while if you're doing something like that. But these are the sort of games that I actually like to see more of. I mean, sure, it's fun to roll a d20 and kill an orc and take its treasure like in the old days. But I think when you're given games that make you think and give you that ability to really engage in a situation, and sure, something like that subject matter could be uncomfortable for some, but I think for those who embrace that sort of like unknown and that idea of gameplay can really find something out of it. Shoot, like if I don't see it played at TotalCon, I might actually just bring my copy to Rising Phoenix and see if we can get a game going. Yeah, it's like I said, it's 90 minutes. It's like one of those games that you can do at night, with some beers or whatever. Well, I don't know if playing it with beers would have the same emotional effect. It's like drunken Alice is Missing, I don't think is kind of as emotionally set. But that's really about it. I'm sure there's a lot more topics to cover and such, but it's I just want to say, I'm happy that each of you joined. I think the perspective is always good. Like I said, our usual Monday night is old men yelling at the clouds. So and granted, we have a fair opinion on things, but again, we're looking at it from gamers who most of us probably started gaming, and I'm sure, like Patrick, you probably also were one of the gamers who started in the late 70s, early 80s, right? So we got to actually see the serious change as it moved along as toward younger people in the industry. And not to say that your opinions aren't as valid, because they're very valid, because you're now seeing a side of the industry that we sometimes can't see. And also, the fact that video games, I know there was rumor about having AI GMs, but I think that was debunked possibly. Although I heard Tenkar's Tavern, which is one of the YouTubers that I follow, there was something talked about where they try to create a model AI game master that looked like Snoop Dogg. So I have no idea what that's even about, but we're heading into interesting times. I don't know if I personally would want to sit in front of an AI game master and play a game that way, but I'm sure that there's like some people who are really into video games. That's kind of the experience anyway. There's an AI running you along and having alligators eat you all the time. That's
and
my
you just have
Conan.
to pray that the AI doesn't glitch out and break, and then your game crashes, and then you scream.
Yeah, scream. All right. Well, anyway, on that note, we'll go ahead and kind of start wrapping up here. So first of all, like I said, thank you everyone for joining. It was an amazing experience, and I know Petra, I get to see you all the time. Well, not all the time, but at game cons and stuff. And Bronwyn, it was definitely a pleasure. Like I've followed you on Twitter for the longest time, so it's actually really nice to get to see you, well, virtually in person anyway. Milty, thank you. It's always good, and I always hear a lot about you from your mom, who actually suggested to me to do this topic tonight. So Rachel, if you're still listening, thank you. And Gwen, well, I feel bad. It's like, Gwen, I see you every week, but no, I appreciate your insight, and I appreciate joining in on this particular thing. So as we wrap up, I'm just going to go around. Again, if you have something you want to say, hey, we're doing this, or you can find me here, or this is something I'm working on, please feel free to do so. If not, definitely, smile, wave, point to some random direction, and that we can move it on. So we'll start. So Petra, where can we find your work or what you're currently doing?
So, not to beat the same drum, but come check our convention out, risingphoenixgamecon.com. It's a new convention. It's really great. It's in Milford, Massachusetts. And we are all about gaming community and diversity. So please come and check us out. We'd love to see you.
And I will second that. Is that I went to the Rising Phoenix Con for my first time this year with one of my one of the co-owners of Solarian Games, and we were just blown away. It was an amazing time. Not only did we play cool games, but we actually learned a lot about like why not to call a scimitar and this whole thing on like Middle Eastern weapon fighting. It was pretty badass. So that was cool.
Thank you for that. It was great. Yeah.
Bronwyn.
I'm Bronwyn. You can find me on Twitter. That's where X. At Softcore Game Girl, or if I ever get my shit together and get back to streaming on Twitter, I'm on there as well as at Softcore Gamer Girl. So,
all right, awesome. Gwen, where can we find you besides Monday nights here?
You can find me on Twitter at epi_the_tome. And I don't post there very often anymore, but yeah, you can check me out and check out Eldritch Osiris Games and simplypf2e.com. And yeah.
All right. And I'll make sure I'll get all this into the show notes when I update them for tomorrow, so people have links and such. And Milkteeth, I don't know if you have a Twitter or an Instagram or any of those fun things that you kids do these days to,
I mean, I got nothing.
Okay. No, that's absolutely fine.
As can be.
not even a TikTok.
I have a TikTok, but it's private.
Gotcha.
I do have a Twitter, but I use it for like the most childish stuff possible. I don't post on it at all, so not even worth promoting that one.
All right. And for me, you can find me at Grindhouse Media, GRINDHAUS, on Twitter. Also, like I said, you can check out SolarianGames.com. You can look up Chapter 13 Press, which was my former publishing company, on DriveThruRPG, or you can just type my name into Amazon and things will kind of appear. So, a lot of freelancing in the past, a few published works under my belt. So it's just always nice to see. And it's just like, I just realized that one of the books that I wrote, Tales from the Fallen Empire, is now 12 years old. And, I've been talking about updating it for the past 6. So it's, I guess I need to get off my butt and do that, make a second edition or something. But, still, it's still out there. I still receive a couple of pennies here and there being tossed at me. So all is good. All right. So anyone, again, thank you for joining us tonight. And I am going to send this out. I will have show notes. So if you're interested in attending Rising Phoenix Con or checking out, Bronwyn stuff or Gwen's, would you say Mech Finder?
Yeah, Mech Finder.
That sounds cool. We have to talk. All right, cool. Anyway, let me go ahead and hit the outro, and we'll see you all later. Have a good night.